Top 10 gemstones so rare. They're banned, restricted, or smuggled. Some gemstones never make it to catalogs. Others appear once at auction, then vanish for decades. These stones are not just rare. They're locked behind customs barriers, flagged by government watch lists, or quietly moved through international gray zones. In Myanmar, one is legally banned, yet still traded behind diplomatic curtains. In Tanzania, another is guarded behind steel fences, its raw form prohibited from crossing borders. In Madagascar, high-value crystals slip away before they're ever officially recorded. These are not legends or exaggerations. Every case is documented, tracked, and, in some instances, still unresolved. What you're about to see is a world shown 10 gemstones so rare, so politically sensitive, or so commercially manipulated that they've been banned, restricted, or smuggled to reach the hands that hold them. Don't forget to press and hold that like button, leave a comment, and hit subscribe before we begin. Ranked 10th, Afghan Lapis Lazuli, a gemstone entangled in conflict. For over 6,000 years, Lapis Lazuli has been extracted from the rugged Hindu Kush Mountains in northeastern Afghanistan. The Sari Sang mine in Badakhshan province remains the world's oldest known source of this vivid blue metamorphic rock. Composed primarily of lazurite, along with calcite, sodalite, and metallic pyrite, the stone's signature ultramarine hue and golden inclusions have made it both visually distinctive and geologically significant. Historically, Afghan lapis were traded along ancient caravan routes to Mesopotamia, Egypt, and later Europe. It was inlaid into the funerary mask of Tutankhamun, carved into seals by Sumerian scribes, and ground into the ultramarine pigment used by Renaissance painters. Its value stem not only from its color and symbolism, but also from its limited geographic origin and challenging extraction environment. In recent decades, the lapis trade has become entangled in regional instability. Control of the Sarisang mines has often rested not with governments or licensed companies, but with non-state actors, including local warlords and armed groups. A 2016 investigation by Global Witness concluded that the lapis trade generated millions of dollars annually for insurgent groups. The report classified Afghan lapis as a conflict mineral, warning that revenue from unregulated mining directly contributed to regional violence and instability. Although no international ban exists on Afghan lapis, ethical concerns have prompted several organizations and buyers to halt procurement. Enforcement remains weak. The majority of lapis leave Afghanistan through unofficial routes, primarily into Pakistan and Iran. From there, it enters global supply chains with little documentation. As a result, most lapis sold on the open market today lack verifiable provenance, a significant obstacle for regulators and investors seeking transparent sourcing. In 2017, the Afghan government designated lapis lazuli as an official precious stone, attempting to formalize the sector and bring it under state control. However, access to the mines still requires negotiations with local militias. In many cases, miners are forced to pay for protection or surrender a portion of their yield to operate safely. Despite these challenges, Afghan lapis remains widely available in international markets. It remains in use in fine jewelry, inlay work, and decorative arts. Prices vary significantly depending on the saturation of color, purity, and size, ranging from modest amounts for low-grade material to several hundred US per carat for top-quality stones. Lapis lazuli is not illegal to trade, but its extraction and export are deeply entwined with unresolved questions around conflict financing, illicit trade, and geopolitical neglect. Among gemstones, it represents a rare intersection of ancient legacy and modern controversy, precisely the type of mineral that earns its place on any list of restricted, smuggled, or caught in legal and ethical limbo. Ranked 9th, Tanzanite, a national treasure under lockdown. Tanzanite is a variety of the mineral zoisite, distinguished by its intense violet-blue hues. What sets it apart geologically is not just its color, but its extreme localization. The only commercially viable deposit known to date lies at the foot of Mount Kilimanjaro, within a 14-kilometer strip of land near Mererani, northern Tanzania. This narrow belt, often referred to as Block C, has made the gemstone one of the rarest in existence. Not in theory, but by verified geological constraint. Since its discovery in 1967, Tanzanite quickly gained international attention, particularly after being promoted by Tiffany and Company as a gem found only in one place on Earth. However, as global demands surged through the 1990s and early 2000s, so did illegal mining, smuggling, and tax evasion. By the end of that decade, Tanzanian authorities faced mounting concerns. Profits were leaving the country untaxed, and domestic industries were left underdeveloped. In response, the government of Tanzania imposed a ban on the export of raw Tanzanite in 2010. The goal was to force local beneficiation, cutting, polishing, and processing within Tanzanian borders to stimulate job creation and retain more economic value domestically. The legislation applied to all Tanzanite roughs weighing more than 1 gram. Those in violation faced seizure of goods, license suspension, or criminal charges. While the policy has partially succeeded in building a nascent lapidary industry in Arusha, it has also had unintended consequences. Supply to global markets became fragmented. Some buyers turned to smuggled stones, often passed through Kenya or illicit channels in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where origin tracing becomes virtually impossible. Trade transparency suffered and price volatility increased. To enforce compliance, the government constructed a perimeter wall around the Mererani mining area in 2018. Surveillance, checkpoints, and digital licensing were added. While these measures improved state control, they also created friction with small-scale miners and led to tensions over who benefits from the gem's high international value. Tanzanite's rarity is not a marketing phrase. It is an acknowledged geological fact. According to estimates from the Tanzanian Ministry of Minerals and International Mining Surveys, the current deposit may be exhausted within a few decades. Unlike diamonds or sapphires, no alternative source has been discovered anywhere else on Earth. In today's regulated form, Tanzanite is legal to buy and sell on global markets, provided it is processed within Tanzania and exported through official channels. Yet the strict export controls, combined with localized production and complex customs enforcement, have made unprocessed Tanzanite one of the most tightly controlled gemstones on the planet. Its presence on this list stems not from conflict or toxicity, but from a deliberate national strategy to protect a non-renewable geological resource. Tanzanite remains both a symbol of national pride and a case study of how mineral wealth is governed, distributed, and, in some cases, restricted from being extracted from the ground in its raw form. Ranked 8th, Burmese ruby, sanctioned by law, desired by legacy. Rubies sourced from the Mogok Valley in central Myanmar possess a distinct combination of saturation, hue, and fluorescence that has earned them the designation pigeon's blood, a trade term reserved only for the deepest, most vivid red rubies with a hint of blue undertone. Among collectors, Burmese rubies are among the most coveted colored gemstones ever discovered. But for over a decade, they were also among the most heavily sanctioned. The global status of Burmese rubies shifted sharply in 2008 when the United States enacted the Tom Lantos Block Burmese Jade Act, banning the importation of rubies and jadeite originating in Myanmar. The act was a direct response to human rights violations and military control over the country's lucrative gem trade. It targeted stones mined, extracted, or sold by state-owned or military-linked entities, which controlled nearly all formal gemstone operations at the time. From a legal standpoint, the ban was comprehensive. It extended not only to raw materials, but also to rubies cut or set in third-party countries, such as Thailand, where much of Myanmar's output is processed before reaching Western buyers. This created significant compliance challenges for international jewelers and auction houses, many of whom withdrew Burmese rubies from inventory due to the complexity of verifying origin and avoiding sanctions. While the U.S. sanctions were temporarily lifted in 2016, they were reinstated under executive orders in 2021 following renewed military crackdowns. As of today, Burmese rubies linked to military enterprises remain prohibited for import into the United States, with parallel scrutiny in place across Europe and other regions. Despite these restrictions, illicit trade has continued to flourish. Rubies continue to cross porous borders into Thailand and China, where documentation is often obscured or falsified. Once recut or mounted, stones frequently lose traceable origin. This circumvention renders provenance checks ineffective for most mid-market buyers, allowing sanctioned goods to re-enter the global supply chain under misleading labels. Beyond legal complexity, the ethical implications are substantial. Revenue from gem exports has historically funded military activities in Myanmar, including the violent suppression of ethnic minorities. According to multiple reports, including those by Human Rights Watch and the UN Human Rights Council, the country's gem industry operates with limited transparency, enabling systemic labor violations and corruption. Economically, Burmese rubies continue to command record-breaking prices at auction. In 2015, a 25.59-carat Burmese ruby set in a ring by Cartier sold at Sotheby's Geneva for over $30 million, making it one of the most expensive colored gemstones ever sold. Such transactions illustrate the contradiction. While the material is entangled in international sanctions, it remains deeply entrenched in high-value private collections and museum archives. Inclusion on this list reflects the unique intersection of scarcity, geopolitical control, and legal prohibition. Burmese rubies are not simply rare in geological terms. They are actively monitored, restricted, and, in many jurisdictions, banned from legal circulation. Their continued trade outside these systems underscores how even the most valuable natural materials can become flashpoints for ethical and legal confrontation. Ranked 7th, Burmese Jadeite, the stone that funds a military regime. Among all jade types, only one has consistently held the highest commercial and gemological classification. Type A Jadeite from northern Myanmar. Its deep emerald green translucence and tightly interlocking crystal structure make it unmatched in luster, toughness, and perceived prestige. The stone is formed under high-pressure metamorphic conditions, primarily in the Kachin state, near Painite, the most prolific jadeite deposit on Earth. Despite its mineralogical appeal, Burmese jadeite is not freely traded in global markets. Its classification as a sanctioned commodity under U.S. federal law began with the 2008 Tom Lantos Block Burmese Jade Act, which barred the import of jadeite and rubies from Myanmar into the United States. While similar in scope to restrictions on Burmese rubies, jadeite posed a more complex threat. It was not merely a luxury export, it had become an entrenched source of revenue for a military-controlled economy. Jadeite from Myanmar is almost entirely controlled by the country's military apparatus or affiliated enterprises. According to investigations by Global Witness, Human Rights Watch, and the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, the jade trade in Myanmar generates billions of dollars annually, much of it undeclared and unregulated. Profits are routinely funneled into military coffers, enabling prolonged internal conflicts and suppressing regional autonomy. Efforts to reform or monitor the trade have yielded limited progress. Myanmar's official gem auctions, known as emporiums, remain closed to independent oversight. Local miners often operate under informal arrangements, paying bribes or rent to militia groups for access to mining tracts. Working conditions are hazardous and largely undocumented. Land degradation and toxic runoff from mechanized extraction have further destabilized northern regions. Since 2021, with the return of military rule, jadeite exports have faced renewed international scrutiny. While not globally banned, Burmese jadeite is now subject to heightened import controls, sanctions, and ethical supply chain restrictions by major markets, including the US, Canada, and the EU. Compliance requirements have tightened, requiring documented proof of origin and legal sourcing, a challenging task as most jade leaves the country through unofficial border crossings into China, where it's cut, carved, and reintroduced into circulation without transparency. The gemstone's continued demand in East Asian markets, especially in high-end jade carving and investment jewelry, has perpetuated this shadow economy. Prices for top-quality Burmese jadeite still reach 6 and 7 figures per piece, depending on factors such as color uniformity, translucence, and the absence of treatments. Yet none of these qualities mitigate the risks embedded in its supply chain. Burmese jadeite earns its position in this ranking not due to geological rarity, but because of its systemic entrenchment in one of the world's most opaque and militarized gemstone economies. Its trade is not merely restricted, it is weaponized, regulated, and smuggled in ways that have profound consequences beyond the gem market. Ranked 6th, Paraíba Tourmaline, controlled by scarcity, traded through loopholes. The first discovery of copper-bearing tourmaline in the Brazilian state of Paraíba in the late 1980s introduced a new chromatic benchmark to the gemstone world. Its neon blue and blue-green colors, caused by trace amounts of copper and manganese, proved chemically and optically distinct from all other tourmalines previously known. What began as a local discovery in the Batalha mine near São José de Batalha quickly evolved into a high-value, globally sought-after commodity with a tightly restricted supply. Geologically, the formation of Paraíba tourmaline requires an unusual combination of lithium, boron, copper, and manganese in granitic pegmatites, an uncommon geochemical environment. The original Brazilian mine yielded only a few kilograms of gem-quality material before being nearly exhausted within a decade. This physical limitation has made true Brazilian Paraíba one of the most controlled and sought-after colored gemstones in existence. As demand surged in the early 2000s, new copper-bearing tourmaline deposits were identified in Mozambique and Nigeria. Though chemically similar, only stones from the original Brazilian locality are recognized by many in the trade as true Paraíba. This distinction has created complex legal and commercial implications, especially for high-end buyers seeking provenance-based investment. In Brazil, export controls on Paraíba tourmaline were strengthened after the initial mining boom. The Brazilian government classifies high-quality stones as a national mineral heritage, which requires specific licensing and documentation for export. Smuggling of rough material, particularly before certification systems were improved, was widely reported in the 1990s and 2000s, often involving undeclared hand-carry exports to Bangkok, Hong Kong, and Antwerp. In Mozambique, where some of the most abundant copper-bearing tourmaline now originates, local regulations also govern the sale of rough material to foreign entities. In 2017, authorities introduced a new law requiring in-country beneficiation for stones with a value above a certain threshold. Violations have led to periodic border seizures and customs investigations involving tourmaline parcels that lacked valid permits or were declared with misclassifications. Despite these efforts, loopholes remain widespread. Stones from Africa are often routed through intermediary countries, where paperwork is altered or origin is obscured. In markets like Hong Kong, where gem imports are not rigorously traced by origin, dealers may use ambiguous trade names such as Paraíba-type tourmaline to avoid scrutiny, blurring the legal line between accurate description and misrepresentation. From a pricing standpoint, Paraíba tourmalines occupy the highest tier of the tourmaline family, with premium Brazilian origin material ranging from $20,000 to $100,000 per carat, depending on clarity, saturation, and documented origin. Stones from Mozambique and Nigeria, while more abundant, still command five-figure prices if properly certified and untreated. Its inclusion in this list is not based on active bans, but on a history of regulated mining, national export controls, and persistent attempts to bypass origin requirements. Paraíba tourmaline exemplifies a gemstone whose extreme rarity and uneven supply enforcement have made it a regular target for mislabeling, transshipment, and selective disclosure in high-value transactions. Ranked 5th, Grandidierite, a geological rarity hidden from global markets. First identified in 1902 by French mineralogist Alfred Lacroix, Grandidierite was named after explorer Alfred Grandidier, a chronicler of Madagascar's natural history. Its chemical composition places it within the orthorhombic crystal system, typically forming in pegmatitic and metamorphic rocks under high-pressure conditions. Despite its long-standing classification, transparent gem-quality Grandidierite remained virtually unknown in jewelry markets for over a century. The mineral occurs in multiple locations globally, but only one deposit, near Tranamaro in southern Madagascar, has consistently yielded specimens with the transparency, clarity, and color saturation required for faceted gemstones. Even then, only a small fraction of mined material qualifies for cutting. Most crystals are opaque or translucent at best, suitable for collectors but not for fine jewelry. Madagascar's Ministry of Mines designates Grandidierite as a strategic mineral, citing its rarity and economic importance. Local authorities maintain strict oversight of mining permits and export licenses, particularly for stones with a certain clarity and carat weight. Several mining sites operate under formal licensing agreements. However, artisanal extraction is also a common practice. In remote areas, unofficial mining, sometimes overlapping with protected ecological zones, has raised concerns about unauthorized exports and environmental damage. Due to its limited supply and fragile supply chain, Grandidierite has become a high-risk target for smuggling and under-the-table transactions. Inconsistent enforcement at port cities like Tourmaline has allowed unregistered materials to enter international markets through shipments with loose documentation. Because global customs offices rarely list Grandidierite under standardized gem classifications, stones may be misclassified as generic mixed minerals or rare blue-green beryl, thereby avoiding scrutiny. While not banned by any government, its trade is restricted by scarcity and administrative bottlenecks. Unlike more commercialized gems, Grandidierite lacks large-scale market infrastructure. Few gem labs have established reliable grading benchmarks, and appraisal data is sparse. Most sales occur in private settings, and auction appearances remain rare. As of 2024, fine specimens over 3 carats with high transparency have sold for upwards of $25,000 per carat, though pricing is highly variable due to inconsistent supply and limited lab certification. The inclusion of Grandidierite in this ranking is based on its geological uniqueness, export regulation by a single sovereign state, and the opacity surrounding its commercial flow. It represents a class of ultra-rare gemstones whose market visibility is inversely proportional to their geological significance. Demand far exceeds documented availability, and in the absence of regulated pipelines, the gemstone remains functionally inaccessible to most global buyers. Ranked 4th, Taaffeite, a gem discovered backwards and rarely seen again. In 1945, a faceted spinel purchased in Dublin revealed an optical anomaly under standard gemological testing. Unlike typical spinel, it displayed double refraction. The buyer, Richard Taaffeite, submitted it for analysis, and the result was historic. The first known discovery of a gemstone, not from rough mineral, but from an already cut stone. It would later be named Taaffeite in his honor. Chemically, Taaffeite is a beryllium aluminum oxide, BeAl 6012, bearing structural similarities to both spinel and chrysoberyl. What distinguishes it is the presence of trace elements, such as iron and chromium, which are responsible for its coloration, ranging from mauve to violet to grayish pink. Its crystallographic and optical properties place it in a unique mineral class. Sources are minimal. Verified occurrences include Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and parts of southern Tanzania. However, most of the material identified since 1945 has been found in alluvial deposits, often misidentified as spinel, and sold accordingly. Only a tiny percentage of stones have been correctly tested, certified, and reclassified as Taaffeite, often long after entering the trade. The rarity is not only mineralogical, but also logistical. No primary mining operation exists today that specifically targets Taaffeite. Stones are typically discovered by chance among other gem gravels, then exported, if not overlooked, without formal classification. This creates a bottleneck in visibility and documentation. The majority of international gem markets have never handled a single authenticated specimen. Due to the absence of structured mining, Taaffeite remains largely outside the scope of formal export control systems. However, its inclusion in high-value parcels, often mislabeled as spinel, has caused regulatory confusion at customs checkpoints in East Africa and Southeast Asia. In regions like Sri Lanka, unrecognized stones may be smuggled out of the country through informal routes or carried by hand without clear origin labeling, thereby bypassing standard valuation and licensing procedures. Fewer than 50 Taaffeite gemstones over 1 carat with gem quality clarity are known to exist in private or institutional collections. Even gemological laboratories classify it as exceedingly rare. Most appearances occur only in museum archives or specialized mineralogical exhibitions. Due to the limited supply, pricing is unstable and largely private, but high-grade material has commanded over $30,000 per carat in discrete transactions. Taaffeite's position on this list is secured by the convergence of three factors: unintentional discovery, a lack of targeted extraction, and a trade pattern that often avoids official channels due to misidentification. It is a gemstone with no infrastructure, no predictable supply, and no standardized path from mine to market. In the gemstone world, visibility and rarity often have an inverse relationship. Taaffeite exists at the extreme of that spectrum. Its absence is not the result of prohibition, but of how the system never fully adapted to its existence. Ranked third, Musgravite, documented, verified, and nearly unavailable. In 1967, a previously unknown oxide mineral was discovered in the Musgrave Ranges of South Australia, a remote and sparsely inhabited region that gave the stone its name, Musgravite. Closely related to Taaffeite in both composition and crystal structure, Musgravite shares the same basic formula, but includes magnesium in place of varying levels of zinc and iron, creating subtle but critical differences in refractive index and absorption spectrum. From the moment it was formally classified, Musgravite was recognized as a mineralogically distinct entity, but it remained scientifically rare for decades, with only a handful of crystals identified globally. Transparent, gem-quality specimens were not authenticated until the early 2000s, and even then, they surfaced sporadically, often in laboratories rather than at mine sites. Primary localities now include Greenland, Sri Lanka, Madagascar, and Antarctica, but production from all these sources is inconsistent, unsystematic, and uncommercialized. There are no industrial operations dedicated to musgravite extraction. Most identified stones have been recovered during exploration for other mineral types, especially in Madagascar, where pegmatite zones occasionally yield trace amounts of these stones. The result is a gemstone that exists almost entirely outside formalized trade flows. Few customs codes distinguish musgravite from more common lookalikes. Most stones enter circulation through private collectors, not commercial dealers. Labs like GIA and SSEF have confirmed fewer than 20 certified faceted stones above 1 carat with known origin and clarity suitable for market presentation. There is no government-imposed ban on musgravite, but practical access is so constrained that no transparent supply chain has ever been established. Small-scale finds are often exported undeclared, misclassified as spinel, chrysoberyl, or synthetic sapphire. In high-risk gem corridors, such as parts of East Africa and Southeast Asia, stones may be hand-carried out of source countries without documentation, never entering official records. Gemological laboratories routinely warn about the lack of standardization. Because musgravite closely mimics the appearance of taaffeite and other magnesium-bearing oxides, even trained gemologists require advanced spectroscopy to confirm identification. This further complicates any effort to establish provenance, value, or regulatory tracking. Auction records are virtually non-existent. Pricing is, therefore, determined on a case-by-case basis, often through closed-door negotiations. When certified, gem-quality musgravite can command values exceeding $35,000 per carat, but sales are infrequent and highly confidential. Most examples reside in museum vaults or advanced private mineral collections rather than retail settings. Musgravite appears on this list not due to its role in any political conflict or legal restriction, but because its rarity outpaces the systems built to handle it. Without mining infrastructure, supply chains, or global oversight, it stands as a gemstone that resists both access and accountability. Its scarcity is not speculative. It is measured, recorded, and acknowledged at the highest levels of mineralogical science. Ranked second, red beryl, mined under lock, sold in silence. Among all known beryls, emerald, aquamarine, morganite, red beryl is the rarest by several orders of magnitude. Chemically identical in structure to emerald, it differs in color due to trace amounts of manganese, producing a vivid raspberry red hue, unlike any other beryl variety. Its optical properties, strong pleochroism, high birefringence, and excellent saturation place it in the highest tier of naturally colored gemstones. Red beryl occurs almost exclusively in the Wawa Mountains of southwestern Utah, USA, within topaz-bearing rhyolite cavities formed by ancient volcanic activity. No commercial deposits have been identified outside of the state of Utah. The only consistently producing site has been the Ruby Violet Claim, a restricted access area that has changed hands multiple times between private owners and corporate holders. The geological conditions required for the formation of red beryl are particular. It needs a precise combination of low-pressure crystallization, high fluorine content, and rare diffusion of manganese within a cooling rhyolite matrix. This confluence has not been replicated elsewhere, not even in known beryl-rich regions like Colombia or Madagascar. Mining is limited by physical accessibility and regulatory control. The U.S. Bureau of Land Management, BLM, oversees much of the surrounding land, and mining claims are tightly enforced. Unauthorized extraction from the Ruby Violet area is considered a federal offense, and mineral trespassing has been prosecuted in recent years. Due to the confined production zone, supply has remained constrained to a handful of authorized operators. Export activity is low and highly monitored. Red beryl shipments leaving the U.S. must be accompanied by documentation, verifying origin, value, and weight. While the gemstone is legal to trade, its appearance in international gem markets is minimal, and outside North America, authenticated specimens are rare. Laboratories like GIA and AGS classify red beryl as a high-risk target for synthetics and disclosure violations. Illicit activity has occurred not in the form of geopolitical smuggling, but through fraudulent misrepresentation and mislabeling. Synthetic versions, particularly those produced via hydrothermal growth, have entered the market falsely labeled as natural. In some instances, stones have been advertised as New Mexican red emerald, falsely implying an alternate geographic origin to bypass scrutiny. In terms of value, red beryl routinely exceeds $10,000 per carat in the open market. For gem-quality stones above 2 carats, prices can multiply significantly, if such stones are even available. Most natural crystals are under 1 carat, heavily included or unsuitable for faceting. Less than 1 crystal in every 150,000 beryl formations meets the criteria for gem use, according to mining surveys. Red beryl earns its place near the top of this list not through direct prohibition, but because access is institutionally gated, legally protected, and geologically confined. Its presence in global trade is the exception, not the norm. Every certified stone represents not just a rare geological event, but the successful navigation of a mineral ecosystem defined by restriction, ownership, and regulation. In the first place, Painite, verified, tracked, and nearly erased from the market. In the taxonomy of minerals, only a few ever receive formal recognition as the rarest of their kind. Painite is one of those few. Identified in 1951 by British mineralogist Arthur C.D. Payne, while cataloging specimens from Myanmar, the stone was initially mistaken for a variety of tourmaline or garnet. It was not until later crystallographic analysis confirmed it as a new barat mineral that the full scope of its uniqueness became evident. For decades, only 2 faceted stones were known to exist. Both were held in museum collections. Painite's composition, which combines zirconium, boron, aluminum, and oxygen under highly unusual crystallization conditions, makes its formation theoretically improbable. Geologists classified it not just as rare, but structurally implausible. The discovery site, Mogok, Myanmar, is also home to rubies and spinels. Still, painite appeared only sporadically in small pegmatite pockets, often embedded in a complex matrix or confused with other barat species. Attempts to locate additional deposits were unsuccessful for more than 50 years. Even after new occurrences were recorded in the early 2000s, faceable material remained nearly non-existent. Painite's listing in the Guinness Book of World Records as the rarest gemstone on Earth is not a marketing claim. It is a classification backed by mineralogical audit. As of 2024, the total number of gem-quality faceted painite stones confirmed by labs worldwide remains under 100. Most weigh less than 1 carat. Very few are available for public or private acquisition. No international ban governs the trade of painite. However, legal access is effectively blocked by circumstances. Myanmar, where painite is sourced, has been under intermittent sanctions from the United States, the European Union, and the United Kingdom, due to human rights violations and military rule. As a result, all gemstones originating from military-controlled zones, including Painite, are subject to strict import restrictions in several countries, whether explicitly named or not. Even without an embargo, commercial extraction does not exist. No registered mine reports Painite as a primary or secondary product. Any new stones are uncovered only as isolated accidental finds by independent miners, most of whom lack the gemological training to identify them. Without proper classification, such material often disappears into local trade networks, is mislabeled, or is discarded. In rare cases where Painite does enter the global market, the gemstone is accompanied by complete spectroscopy reports, origin tracing, and custodial chain documentation. Prices are not standardized as the sample size is too small to form a consistent valuation model. However, when available, high-transparency faceted stones exceeding 1 carat have been priced between $50,000 and $100,000 per piece, depending on clarity and provenance. Painite does not need to be banned to be restricted. It is constrained by geology, constrained by politics, constrained by the very system that cataloged it. Its presence at the top of this list is not symbolic. It is statistical. Among thousands of minerals, it stands alone, not for how it shines under light, but for how it resists every attempt to be traded, extracted, or even found again. In the world of fine gems, value is often defined by color, clarity, and carat. But for these 10 stones, rarity isn't measured in carats alone. It's enforced by borders, protected by law, or concealed behind layers of trade silence. Some are geologically unique. Others are politically untouchable. And a few may never reappear in legal markets again. Ownership of these stones isn't just a matter of wealth. It's a matter of access, influence, and navigating systems that most people never see. Behind each gem lies a web of extraction limits, export controls, embargoes, or deliberate obfuscation, conditions that redefine what it means to be rare. As demand continues to rise and source regions grow more unstable, the story of these gemstones isn't closing, it's only tightening. Let us know which one resonates with you in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.